Well, joining us, he's a staff writer for The New Yorker, journalist Philip Gourevitch, the author of We Wish to Inform You That Tomorrow We Will Be Killed with Our Families, Stories from Rwanda. Thanks for speaking with us here on France 24. What are you expecting from these declassified documents?
I think we don't know what to expect. I don't think it's been made clear yet in any of the reports I've seen what exactly the scope of these documents are, what level of communications there are there, whether it includes only foreign ministry, or because I think it was announced as a foreign ministry release, or whether it's going to be the presidential papers, whether it includes military documents. But I think we're all very curious to see, because for a very long time, France has made every effort to obscure its extremely problematic role both before, during, and after the genocide as essentially a supporter of the Hutu power forces that committed the genocide.
And that's where things get a little bit murky, because we don't know to what extent they supported, beyond President Habyarimana, those hardline Hutu militias.
Well, it's been quite well documented that they ran a lot of interference for them, that they considered the preservation of that government, and those militias were the militias of that government. I mean, that was the MRND party of Habyarimana that was the Interahamwe militia. And they did a great deal to sort of run rat lines afterwards to rescue and whisk away and then help get away any number of people who had direct complicity or actual blood on their hands, and ran diplomatic interference and ran investigations of everything that they could against the other side in the war, the RPF, but never really looking seriously into these things, even as the pressure mounted for decades. And so there's a great deal of evidence, actually, that's been piled up by reporters, by investigators, by criminal tribunals, that shows France's very intimate engagement, as well as a number of statements made at the time. There were many soldiers who served in Opération Turquoise who were shocked to discover that, far from being there merely to rescue the Tutsis who were in danger of being exterminated in a genocide designated to exterminate them, that they were there actually to rescue some of the perpetrators.
In light of that, what's left to know that the French aren't telling? Philip, you must have an idea of nuggets that you specifically have looked for.
Well, I think what your report even said earlier, what was the thinking? How were people thinking about this? There's a quote that's gone around over the years. I think it was first in Figaro that somewhere Mitterrand had said something like, well, in a country like this, these little countries, a genocide is not so important. Was that the mentality? Was it genuinely the kind of perverse support of the French-speaking world and a kind of client-patron relationship that you also saw next door with Mobutu, and this fear of an Anglophone front coming in from East Africa? Is that what was at work? What kind of geopolitical stakes were at work? What was the role, perhaps, of Christophe Mitterrand, the son of the president, who was involved in various nefarious deals that have since landed him in legal trouble with some of the people in Habyarimana's outfit? What was the ideological or mental component there that has been denied, obviously, because there's even an attempt to deny the genocide from many of these same people? So I think there was a letter yesterday in Libération, the newspaper, from a very broad range of civil society and intellectual and historians who work on this issue, who were saying, look, it's not France as a nation, it's a set of senior officials who determined these policies, both from the left and the right in France, during a period of 4 or 5 years from the early to the mid-90s, most dramatically. Sarkozy, of course, distanced himself from that and started to repair the relations with Rwanda, and to say, as Chirac not so long ago had said of World War II, yes, there was a grave fault. There is something here to answer for, and not something here to deny and cover up.
But how far can the current president go without, politically speaking, and it's tricky, disowning his own armed forces?
Well, you don't have to disown your own armed forces to recognize past faults. I mean, that's just not true. There's an overprotectiveness by most states of their armed forces, but France is a democratic country with laws on the books and supposedly measures of accountability. And I don't think that you're disowning your armed forces to say that some of them and some of the political actors in this story played a very, very, very damaging role and gave cover and comfort and fought alongside forces that, for lack of a better word, are forces of evil.
Today, times have changed. There's a new generation, not only of politicians, but also of officers. Would you say that this wariness that Francois Mitterrand certainly had of all things Anglophone, especially when it came to Africa, that's been lifted?
I can't say that because I'm not familiar with the way that these things are. I mean, that's not something that's always discussed in a very open way. So I don't know how that's thought about. I think that there may be a new generation within the military, but there are any number of senior officials who were intimately involved in France's politics in Rwanda during the genocide and its policies and its practices before, during, and after the genocide in support of Hutu power or in defense of it or running interference for it, who are still around, who still wield a fair amount of influence, and much more so with the return of their party to power under Hollande. And I think that that's just unambiguous. And that's much more the problem than anything to do with a newer generation of French military officers.